So hello fellow Earthlings, this is Earthling 6455463728, and I was looking at Joe Rogan's podcast on YouTube yesterday, and he had on this guy, a viral expert called Michael Osterholm. And this guy was pretty good. He had some good information, because I'd been hearing so much conflicting information about people who were saying, this is serious, it's really bad, and other people are saying, oh, come on, it's just like the flu, it's no big deal. So I was glad to hear someone who was involved in SARS and MERS to some extent be able to speak informatively, comparatively about both of these things and about the current pandemic, as they say now. So some of the things that he went into were that, for example, and I guess I want to speak to what is currently the characteristics of COVID-19, and then in a more general sense. So currently some of the characteristics are that mainly people over the age of 50 have the disease. That's what I've heard. But he was saying that they have found some cases of people, severe cases of people who are in their 40s in Italy. He mentioned that as of right now, children don't seem to have it. But I would imagine that might mean that they are carriers. They don't get sick from it. Also that since the virus is airborne and there are people without symptoms who are transmitting it, they're really doing it just by breathing. So it's not like someone has to sneeze on you. They don't have to cough. They don't have to wipe their runny nose and then shake your hand. It's just by simply breathing that they can transmit this disease. And some of them may never develop any kind of illness, but they can still spread it to other people. Some of the other things you were talking about was, obviously you can't have, bans on public gatherings for as long as this thing is going to last. It's probably going to, as they've put the bans, the number of cases are going to go down, but the disease, the spread of it is going to last probably for 3 months, for 6 months, maybe even to the end of the year. As soon as things get back to normal, as they have to, as soon as people get back onto trains and planes and whatever else in China, the number of cases are just going to go back up again. He was also speaking to the fact that you can't have, large numbers of kids outside of school, and it's not even really beneficial because the kids don't seem to be suffering from the disease. But you can't have all these kids out of school because some of their parents work in healthcare. So where are these parents supposed to have their kids for this extended period of time when there isn't any school? Joe Rogan also asked him about saunas. He'd heard that the high temperatures in saunas might be able to kill the bacteria in your lungs and in your nose and wherever else. And Mr. Osterholm was saying that basically you can't have those temperatures in your lungs or your nose because they would start to cook your insides. So those temperatures, by virtue of the fact that we can exist in a sauna, you don't get those temperatures inside of your body because they would hurt you more than the virus would. And especially the fact that you only breathe out and breathe in a small amount of your lung capacity at any given time anyway. So it's not like you can actually, breathe in this amount of air, which again would cause you more harm than any good anyway with respect to cooking your insides. So again, because it's airborne, all of the recommendations about washing your hands and keeping them clean and not touching your eyes, they don't really matter as much because you're not going to be realizing that you're breathing in air that somebody else just breathed out that's full of viruses, and you didn't have to touch anything. So with respect to the measles, I know that's a big thing because people, there's droplets that can last for a long time. I guess you may as well wipe down counters and so on. But again, because of the transmission, airborne transmission, it doesn't matter as much. People are going to be unsuspecting, and there's nothing much that you can do because simple, ordinary masks are not going to work. The only masks that are going to work are these N something masks that people use, even with respect to, like, in industrial uses, like paint spraying and so on. But those are really expensive right now because they're rare, because they're hard to come by, because they don't produce very many of them. They aren't stockpiled. So that's going to be a really difficult thing. Something else that was mentioned was that the vaccines can probably be created really quickly, all right? But whether or not it's safe and effective, that's something that, I mentioned with respect to programming as well. I could probably write programs for any purpose really quickly. But once you start to use the program, you realize, whoa, you have to take care of this case. You have to take care of that case. You didn't check this and you didn't check that. So it's the same thing again. You can make a vaccine for somebody, but is it going to kill 1 in every 1,000 people more than the virus would? Then it's not really any good. Or, is it really effective? Is it going to give protection to 50% of the people or 25%? What is it? But in terms of, more timely and a more permanent bit of information, what he was saying is that our interaction with animals is what is always going to put us at risk when it comes to these diseases. So, for example, SARS was as a result of civet foxes in Asia. MERS was as a result of camels. So, and there are other diseases that we can get from animals. You can get Lyme disease in the US. Luckily, it's not contagious at the moment. You can get, between people, as far as I know, you can get, well, not right now, you can't get it, but chronic wasting disease, which is like mad cow disease, but for deer. As of right now, they don't know if it's, affecting anyone as yet. But it takes so long to show the signs of someone having it that by the time people start to show the signs of that, it'll be too late, because there might be a large number of people that are exposed and exposing, those prions to other people. And it might be a large number of people that are already exposed, whereas these things take maybe 10 years to actually manifest itself, but the people already have it. And there's no cures for these prions. So there's that. It is true that, what would you call it, exotic animals, like in Africa with Ebola, and presumably with respect to, HIV is sexually transmitted, so I don't know how that one would have worked. But in Asia, in these wet markets, people would, and they call it bushmeat, and then they call it, I don't know, in Africa they call it bushmeat, or with respect to Africa they call it bushmeat, but with respect to America they just call it hunting, right? But maybe it's just because they don't eat. No, it doesn't matter. Even if they were people were able to hunt like eagles and all sorts of other things, I don't think they would call it bushmeat. But Mr. Osterholm was talking about the fact that there are a lot of things that, for example, there are really crucial drugs that are mainly made in China. And because of the slowdown in manufacturing in China, there would be a deficit of a lot of these things. And that was the case with respect to IV bags that were made, most of them were made in Puerto Rico, and that was when the first hurricane hit, it would have caused a major shortage because everything was focused in that area. Basically, the world is not prepared for this current disease, and it's also not prepared for the for any other disease for that matter. So, and that's part of the problem, that we are not learning. There was Zika, and he said there was a suggestion that there would have been a vaccine by now in 2015, and there's no vaccine for Zika. Matter of fact, it seems like it's fallen off completely. There was research and maybe money that was allotted to trying to find some sort of vaccine for coronaviruses collectively. And when MERS and SARS went away, people seem to have lost interest, and maybe the fields seem to have lost funding. So it was a very enlightening conversation that he had with Joe Rogan, and it speaks to the existential threat that diseases pose to us, that we are not, taking proper care with. So between, there's climate change, and there's, water that's running out in places that use artesian water sources all across the world. There's polluting of water. There's mercury poisoning in large fish when it comes to eating fish, and maybe that might protect some of these fish. It might be a good thing for some of these fish in the end. But all of these existential threats, we don't really seem to be putting the money in to try to make sure that we can be mitigated. I don't know if I think that there's a lot of money or sufficient money being put into asteroids. I think so. I think it's been claimed that in many of the articles that I've read that anything that can cause a major problem is being tracked right now, and there are eyes in the sky looking for these things. So maybe it's exciting enough. I mean, there's been a couple of disease movies. If you exclude the zombie movies, then there was one that's being passed around with Gwyneth Paltrow in it, and Matt Damon, Contagion. And then there was the Ebola one with the monkey. But asteroids are a bigger one. It's more exciting, it's more catchy. Maybe that's why asteroid hunting has enough money. Or maybe because it's an easier field. It's not as difficult as making a vaccine is, for example. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about this guy on Joe Rogan who had some interesting stuff to say. Oh yeah, and he was also saying that people who are full-figured and people who are smoking, there were a lot of deaths, a higher mortality rate among smokers in China. And with respect to people outside of China, it's expected that there might be a higher impact because China doesn't have as many full-figured people. So when the disease gets outside of to areas like the US where there are a lot of full-figured people, there might be a lot more mortality and illness because of that. So but this is something again that's beyond COVID-19, because that's going to affect people indefinitely. So it's better to try to be healthy and to get sleep and to get exercise and keep your immune system as strong as possible. So anyway, guys, wish me lucks. You can like or unlike. You can comment, subscribe, and or share. Peace. Thanks.